twinkling of an eye, and then continue onward with that same speed to fly. Do you think that you could ever, through all eternity, find out the generation where gods began to be? Or see the grand beginning, where space did not extend? Or view the lost creation, where gods and matter end? Methinks the spirit whispers, no man has found pure space, nor seen the outside curtains, where nothing has a place. The works of God continue, and worlds and lives abound. Improvement and progression have one eternal round. There is no end to matter, there is no end to space, there is no end to spirit, there is no end to race, there is no end to virtue, there is no end to might, there is no end to wisdom, there is no end to light, there is no end to union, there is no end to youth, there is no end to priesthood, there is no end to truth. There is no end to glory, there is no end to love, there is no end to being, there is no death above. There is no end to glory, there is no end to love, there is no end to being, there is no death above.
It's monthly Mormon Mondays. It's time for the secret handshake. Tune in and race through the veil. It's time for monthly Mormon Monday.
Hey, let's talk about the Satanic Panic. I'm Paranoid American. This is my co-host, Heidi Love. How you doing, Heidi?
Good. Yeah, why not, right? I did live through this.
I mean, me too. So, special edition of Monthly Mormon Monday, which is on a Monday for once. We both lived through the Satanic Panic, although it didn't even occur to me until recently when Jacob IsBell, who may or may not pop in towards the end of this, but he mentioned like the Mormon version of Satanic Panic. And of course, why wouldn't the Mormons have their own version of all of this? You know, they've got their own version of everything. So we're going to, I guess, talk about Satanic Panic in general, and then also find out what it was like within a Mormon community and maybe how they differ.
Oh, yes, we always get our own. And, you know, anything like this, the Mormons are going to jump on board for sure. Why not? Right?
I'm gonna need my glasses for this one because we're gonna be super serial.
Oh man.
There we go. My credibility just shot up at least 5 points. And then I'm gonna add another 5 points to it real quick.
Do it. Let's go. Are you gonna put your hat on?
No, it's not that kind. It's not that kind of party.
Oh,
so
well,
I've got a little collection here, but this from all public accounts, this is the book that literally started the entire Satanic Panic. I don't know if I agree with that entirely, but this is the thing that gets blamed. It's called Michelle Remembers, and it ties into the satanic ritual abuse stuff. It ties into the false memory foundation / syndrome stuff. But this one just is for credibility. Like, I've got a copy. I've read it a few times. I would prefer to just get the PDF, actually. Here's the other one, is the Franklin cover-up by John DeCamp. and you can see I put a sticker down here because the rest of the subtitle was getting me the weirdest looks if I was reading it in
Oh
like an
man.
airport or in public, because it says some pretty spicy things in the
Oh,
subtitle. And
gotcha.
then and then I got some of the normie stuff. So there's this one called Satan in America that kind of just covers like pop culture stuff. And then the main book that usually gets cited to debunk Satanic Panic is this book, just straight up called Satanic Panic: The Creation of a Contemporary Legend. And I've got Buko sort of notes in this thing. I've poured over all of these, and then for good measure, Codex Magica by Tex Mars, because I feel that this might have fed into the tail end of Satanic Panic, because he took all the claims that you heard from anywhere, accepted those as gospel, and then said yes and then put together this big
Yes,
book.
and
So this,
well,
I mean,
also
go
the
ahead.
books that I have, I don't have. I have the PDFs of, but they're from a Mormon writer, and we'll go over those as well.
See, that's what I guess that's the point, is that never did it cross my mind to look over a specific denomination, more specifically Mormons, into Satanic Panic. But I feel very well versed in this subject. I also have written my own comic on the Satanic Panic that's not out yet. But if you go to satanicpaniccomic.com, you can sign up for it. But I've got very strong bias at this point. I feel like I've got a good idea on the Satanic Panic. Long story short, it's always been here. It didn't start in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s or the 50s or the 40s or the 30s or the 20s. It goes so far back that really it depends on what your definition of Satan is. But really, as soon as the Puritans got off the boats and looked around and saw some half-naked Indian dudes holding spears, they were like, "Oh, Satan's here already. We got to get down to business," right? So
Satan,
I would
bad
argue
guy.
that was like the original Satanic Panic was when the first Puritans stepped off the first boat.
Yeah, of course. It's not. I mean, like, really, are we ever thinking that this was like not a thing? I mean, they brought all their biases with them, so you know.
And I mean, unless you're into like weird occult podcasts, I think the Satanic Panic, when you say it originally, for me, it sounds like it would conjure up one of two ideas. One is the Salem witch trials, which is the earliest one, or it's the 80s and 90s one, the fun one, the one that
Fun one.
and I remember my experience. I guess we'll get right into that. My experience in the 80s and 90s Satanic Panic. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and the police would come into the schools and they would warn you that there were vans and people that were like snatching kids up there. We didn't get to see the video, but if you go on eBay, you can actually find these 1980s VHS cassette tapes that were used by police departments all across the country, and they'd pop in, they'd put in the VCR, and it would be some cheesy, 80s stuff, but it's like, watch out, kids, don't get into that
Lollipops.
van. And yeah, it's I would love to show some clips, but I'm not prepared. But
Oh
anyways,
man, that would be fun. Yeah.
this was not something that you only heard about in church or in some weird little niche. Like, the actual police were going into the public schools and saying, watch out. They were sending letters home. We had these little pamphlets about creating secret code words and passwords with your parents in case they need to send someone to pick you up. They got to know
That's
this
a good idea.
password. And
Yeah.
it's a good idea in general. And I guess I'll jump out into a tangent really quick here too. It sort of led into the Masonic chip program that in turn also got blamed for some Satanic Panic sort of aftermath, right? But
Oh
the
man.
whole premise was having your kid documented and having secret passwords and having all of these insider symbols so that if you're in duress or if you get kidnapped. And that was the world that I grew up in, that where there was going to be someone around every corner that was waiting to kidnap me and basically do satanic things to me, whatever that meant.
Exactly. No, I definitely agree. Yeah, we were definitely raised. It was a different kind of thing. And I've got one that she would just go no matter what. And so we have to, we really do have to kind of try and get through to that one, because she's like, seems like that house is better. Maybe. I don't know. Let's try it. I'm like,
What do
get
you
over
what do
it.
you mean? A
My
Satanist?
daughter, no,
Is she a
she would
Satanist?
go. No, she would just go with them anyway. Like, seems like a good
No.
idea. I'm like, no, it's not a good idea. What are you
It's a life
doing?
experience.
Ugh. Yeah, that one is a life experience, literally. I'm just trying to get her to 18 safe. Oh boy. But yeah, here in Utah for Satanic Panic, I mean, they really focused on like Dungeons and Dragons. That was a big deal here. That was like a big no, no, no. And they even had like groups against this. And I guess nationally they had groups against this called BAD. Have you heard of this?
I absolutely have. What does it stand for again, though? Do you know?
Bothered about Dungeons and Dragons. I had to Google it because I didn't know.
So like, and it has that 80s lameness to it, which is now cool again.
Oh, for sure it did. And then we had some books here in Utah called Go Ask Alice, Jay's Journal. It Happened to Nancy. And these were kind of like after school specials, but spicy. And so Go Ask Alice was about drugs. And it happened to Nancy was about AIDS. And then the worst one and the most sad story I'm going to tell today is Jay's Journal, which it really was. These were all based off true stories, but she decided to like add really bad things to them. Like the kid was just depressed and she's like, but he seems like a Satanist to me. So she was like, yeah, Satanist. And he wasn't a Satanist and she didn't change the names good enough. And these parents are thinking, oh, because she'd already written the one book, Go Ask Alice. And it was all about like, don't do drugs, big Nancy Reagan time, all this stuff. And so, she goes in and she's like, okay, here, just, help people not be sad enough that they expire themselves. And so the mom gave the journal to this lady. And this lady is a situation. She's a Mormon situation. Let me tell you, she's a Mormon. She never went to college, but she says she did. She says she's Dr. Sparks. So Beatrice Sparks. And she never did any of those things. She claimed she was a psychotherapist. She claimed all these big claims. None of it's true. She also claimed all of these stories were 100% true. Yes. And they weren't. And that they were like legit, the actual, like it reads as the diary of these people. And so she changes everything. And these people, the Barretts, which his real name wasn't Jay, his real name was Alden. And it got so bad in their town to this day, he cannot have a gravestone because every time they put it up, somebody kicks it down, spray paints it, like just demolishes this family's honor of their son because everybody thinks he's a Satanist, which he was never a Satanist. So, yeah.
It almost sounds like a Mormon version of Michelle Remembers in some way, where all the people involved, their credentials came into question, the stories came into question immediately after, but just it being the catalyst means that you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So how big was the impact of the Go Ask Alice? Like, did everyone know about it?
It was huge. Yes, you want to know why? Because they banned it. And so then they started burning it. And after they started burning it, then it got really big because it had a sex scene in it about
it's a book, right? We're talking about a book. Okay.
Yes, it had a B, you can figure the other initial in it. And nobody had ever written about this. So it was a big, huge ordeal. And the Utah moms were like, hell no. I'm pretty sure they said heck no. Heck no. More like that. Anyway, so they started burning this and then it got really big. Like, what? You can't get it? You have to put your name on a list at the library. So then it got really big time. Yeah. So yeah.
On a list. I mean, and if that library was in Salt Lake City, I assume that list was not anonymous, right? Does that mean that now the Mormons know who read it and who didn't?
Right. And then Rick Emerson, actually, this got so big in Utah in 2022. Rick Emerson wrote a book called Unmasking Alice or Unmask Alice because he blew it out of the water with all Beatrice's bullshit. All of it. He's like, nah, she was never a doctor. Like, she never helped any people. The kid wasn't a Satanist. So it went on the news and everything. Yeah.
So she admitted it, though?
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
No,
they had to prove it.
She brought this with her. Is she still alive? I wonder if she brought that to the grave.
I think she did die, and I don't think she ever said sorry. And you know what was creepy is she would keep a journal, and this was proven, I guess, for her family. She would keep a journal of all these horrible things about the Barrett family and this poor kid's grave, and like all these horrible things that were happening because she couldn't freaking change a name good enough. And she literally kept a journal like, haha, his grave got taken down again. Yay. And she would like keep pictures and newspaper articles. It was really weird. Really weird. So deranged.
What was worse as a more like what would be looked down more, doing drugs or doing Dungeons and Dragons?
Dungeons and Dragons, for sure.
Really? So you get by if you got caught with like a joint, but if you were summoning elves and dwarves and fighting dragons in a fantasy world?
No,
here's
never.
Here's the bad one that you talked about.
Yes. In fact,
my
husband said my husband said
this number. I want to call this almost.
Oh my gosh. My husband said that back in the day, I stayed out of it pretty much because I was really a cowgirl, like major cowgirl. And I just stayed out of all of it because I didn't really like rock and roll. But they would even go through and like they were having firesides, which do you know what a fireside is?
So you have to explain it to me.
Okay. So this is when the Mormons get together. Usually it's a youth activity and they go and they talk about things at nighttime and all get together and have like basically a devotional. It's a devotional. And so, yeah, they did that. And they would talk about these, rock and roll is evil. They were, my husband said, literally, my cousins took their like CDs and their records and they were throwing them out in the road and smashing them. And like Kiss is like knights in Satan's service, and Rush is raised under Satan's hand, and AC/DC.
Is that true? I've never heard that about Rush, actually.
AC/DC, Antichrist, Devil's Children, all this crazy stuff. So, yeah, this is like, if you go on Reddit, you'll see like this is major. Yeah. Yep.
Here, and I've got an example too. If you're listening, too bad. But if you go on eBay, you can just search for hit the name of the video, and I'm pretty sure this is like a repro. Is Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults, and there's a little sticker on it that says officer training purposes only. And then just because it was like late 80s, I think maybe early 90s, it's got that aesthetic to it, and it starts out with this digital brick wall with a little pentagram, and then it's Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults. And the rest of it is actually pretty awesome. Maybe I should try and find a version of this and upload it somewhere.
So
I've been tempted to get like an original copy, but I don't know if I can trust that there be originals. But again, the point being is that police, state-funded police, would go into state-funded public schools, not Christian academies, not Mormon schools, all over the country, and play these videos for kids, telling them that there were, these things that existed called satanic cults and why you should be afraid of it. And I'm talking about first grade, second grade, third grade. I don't know how far up it went, because by the time I was probably in like 7th or 8th grade, now Marilyn Manson was in the top 40 everywhere, and the goth scene was kind of in full swing. For a while, the Satanic Panic existed still at that point. It had turned into something that was in vogue, or a way to lash out at your parents and society and all the things, right? But and
Geraldo, right? Like Geraldo had a big part in this. Sorry to say, Geraldo. Every day when I came home, all y'all, we won't just blame one. Mari, who else? I don't know.
Jesse Raphael, Ricky Lake, Jerry Springer, all of them. Yeah.
They all were like Satanist, every corner Satan. Yeah. I was like, holy cow, where are all these people? Like, and little did I know I was probably in a witch coven myself. So haha. The Mormons, no, they don't like Joseph stuff.
What did Marilyn Manson have a big pull in the Mormon community?
Oh no, there was none of that. Like I said, I made my life easy for myself. First of all, I'm a hick from Idaho, so it was simple. Like it didn't matter. I really was a cowgirl. So I just stayed in the country lane, and no matter what bad words they said or anything, it could be the worst country song ever. It could be singing about all the bad things. My grandma still was cool with it. I got to go country line dancing, probably why I have a bad back. Who knows? I was good. I didn't need any of that.
What were the actual biggest rumors that got passed around as being true in the Satanic Panic in the Mormon world? Because I can list a whole bunch in the non-Mormon world.
Yeah, you couldn't listen to like a lot, really, honestly. The music was a huge situation. If you partook in that, it was sketchy. And the way you dressed, you couldn't wear all black. Like there were some people, like even my grandma would just meet some people and she's like, nope, not hanging out with that one again. Forget it. Like it was just easier in my life to stay with the country folk because I was like, this is way too hard. Nobody passes.
This came up on a couple of the Mormon Mafia ones where we talked about Vegas and casinos and that Mormons are allowed to play cards, but you're not allowed to gamble. So if there's nothing at stake, then you can play Go Fish or you can play whatever you want as a pastime, right? Is that like a Jack Mormon thing, or is that
no, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay, so if Dungeons and Dragons is off limits, I want to just like inch towards a line and see when we cross the line. If Dungeons and Dragons is off limits, then I assume something like Magic the Gathering would probably be off limits because you're literally casting spells and enchantments, right?
Yeah, I know this. To this day, I have never, ever even seen anything of a Dungeons and Dragons because that's how serious it was enforced at my house.
So what about like Pokemon cards? Because Pokemon cards seem like the same as a Magic card, but it's just themed differently.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Pokemon did hit it off really big here in Utah.
And they have, for example, Star Wars trading card games that
they don't like our talk.
Who doesn't like our talk?
It's not good.
Who doesn't like the talk?
I might have to go out and come back in.
Oh, Heidi's having issues. Okay. Are you back?
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
We've lost Thomas. Can you guys see Thomas or me?
Oh yeah, Heidi's having some issues. We'll have to kick Heidi out. Well, the point that I was getting at, I'll repeat it when she gets back in here.
They don't like our talk today, I'm telling you what.
I assume in the chat you guys can hear and see me though, right? Or both of us. I think Heidi's just having some issues. But I was going to talk about they have these trading card games that are exactly like Magic. Are we back?
They can hear us. Oh,
yeah,
I can't hear anything and I can't see Thomas. Me. Okay.
Okay.
Weird. I'm gonna refresh stream on my end.
Yeah, there we go. And actually, I'll pull some images up. But there's like a Star Wars trading card game, and I'm just wondering where the line is. So if you go from Dungeons and Dragons is not allowed, Magic the Gathering's not allowed, but Star Wars games, I'm gonna assume are allowed. And literally, the only thing that we're changing are just the names of the characters and some of the artwork. But you're doing the exact same mechanics. So I wonder where the actual line is between what's allowed and what's not allowed for Mormons. Are we back?
I'm back. Okay, that
awesome.
Was weird. I couldn't see or hear anything, so I'm like, that's weird. But I could see the feed. But
okay, so the point being made though, that Mormons are probably not allowed to play Magic the Gathering cards. But what if it were Star Wars? Are they allowed to play Star Wars cards and cast like Star Wars Jedi magic? This is awesome.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We try again. Hopefully it's fine now.
Are you good? Know. Are you good?
I hope so.
Okay.
Well, I'm in Utah. They don't want us talking about this today, I guess.
Hopefully you heard what I was saying while you were going in and out.
No words.
Okay. Well, are Star Wars cards allowed? If they sit down and they want to play Star Wars, like role play like you're in a Star Wars world.
They love Star Wars. Star Wars is officially okay, just like Harry Potter. Right. I don't know why.
So, okay, well, if the answer is you don't know why, but I like somewhere there's obviously a line between Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering and Harry Potter, because there are Harry Potter card games too, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. So you can cast a spell, and like if you were in the other room and your kids are playing card games and you don't know what card game they're playing, and all you hear is, I cast this spell, I cast this enchantment, I shoot a fireball at your dragon. You run in there and you're like, Absolutely not. You guys are not allowed to do this. And then someone's like, but mom, it's Harry Potter. It's not this other thing. And then you just say, oh, why didn't you tell me, honey? That's fine. As long as your witches and your dragons are in Harry Potter and your werewolves are from Twilight, then we're all good here. But if it's from
Right.
Magic the Gathering, then it's not allowed here.
Pretty much. Oh, they do that with many things. And I'll tell you, it's so big here. Like the classrooms are done in Harry Potter theme. The parties are done in Harry Potter theme. Like it's just, yeah. Oh my gosh.
Someone was asking to the Illuminati card game. Not only I've shown a couple on some streams before, but like I'll pull a hipster card and oh great. I'll pull a hipster card, maybe even right now as we're talking, that in the 90s I went to a KB toy store and they had a clearance on these weird things called Illuminati cards. So I just bought like 2 or 3 boxes of these things, like wrap boxes, and opened them all that same day. If I was, I don't know, thinking ahead of time, if I had a time machine, I would not open them, probably just put them on eBay, but I opened them all. I've still got all of the cards that I opened, and I try to get all my friends to actually play the Illuminati card game with me, but it wasn't actually that fun. Either that or we didn't know what the heck we were doing compared to every other card game. Heidi's definitely going through some issues right now. So maybe the Satanic Panic is completely off limits even for the ex-Mormon community. I'll grab when she comes back on, I'll grab some of my actual Illuminati trading cards and show them off. But I do wanted to show a couple of these other bad things that Heidi had brought up. Here's one is a news article. Dungeons and Dragons cause moral conflict, protests. Evangelists see game as a front for demon worship. So this was one of the claims that you would see over and over again. And it wasn't just the Mormons or the Baptists or the Catholics. I'm pretty sure it was kind of across the board. And then there was also not just one chick track. I think there might have been 2 or 3 different chick tracks, which are famously like some of my biggest inspirations ever. These are some of the comics that I make are based on these chick tracks. And they always had this very fundamental Christian kind of spin to them. So if anyone in any sort of denomination was outraged, it was definitely going to be Jack Chick. Are we back again?
I really hope so. I've never had it be this naughty. I don't know what's happening.
Did Mormons ever come across Jack Chick? Did little chick tracks ever show up in your community?
No, I don't think so.
Probably, it was probably a denomination thing because he was definitely not Mormon, but I don't know if he ever talked about Mormons.
Okay. No, I know that people were into D&D only because my brother loved it. And I know that people would play like light as a feather, stiff as a board, and Ouija boards and all that. And I'm like, yeah, count me out for all of that. Yeah, no, that's a no.
How did the craft do in the Mormon community?
I mean, honestly, I was the biggest rule follower. I know you wouldn't think so now, but yeah, if there was any of that, I just left. So I don't know. I was like a really good student. I just stayed home and was a nerd. I went to my debate tournaments.
So if you got invited over to like a sleepover and they said, hey, we're gonna play light as a feather, stiff as a board, you just immediately pack your stuff and leave?
Well, it did happen once when I was super young and I freaked out and went home and cried, but I was only like 8. So, I mean,
did you see them actually do it?
Yeah, no, we did it and it scared me. Yeah, no, I was done.
What happened? Did you know?
It works. It works.
You have to define work because to like again,
one
I guess
finger lifting people.
Conversation.
Yeah, one finger lifting people up, but you got to tell them they're
scam, right? It's just the girls playing tricks on each other and pretending like it's working. No.
Well, you got to lift them up. You got to lift them up. So after you pretend to make them die in some way, then you say the chanting and light as a feather, stiff as a board. You can lift them, and it was only like 4 of us and we weren't very big. We were kind of little and we lifted them up with like 1 finger each at the end. Like it was weird. I don't know. There was no grownups there, nothing, no kids that were old enough to put a scam on us basically. So
well, what about Heidi today? Because like Aren't you
Uh,
just as satanic panicky now? If you walked in and your kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons, like I
yeah,
summon
no.
Lord Azazel, wouldn't you be like, absolutely not?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
So,
But I would
so I mean, you're
explain.
kind of
However,
satanic panic now, right?
I would explain to them what that is and why we don't do that. Not like, oh, that's just bad. This is why. And you can do that later if you want to do that. But like, not in my house. No, sir. No, I don't. You know what? I don't know if it's my heritage because I'm related to Zena Huntington, right? The one lady that had all the really good blessings that always worked and stuff. And I don't know, whatever. They say she was kind of witchy. I just don't need extra things in my house because my house has a mind of its own already and it scares the shit out of me. I will tell you, my daughter brought home tarot cards and my other daughter was in doing her work. She was on a computer job in this corner, very, very corner where I'm at. But the bedroom started, the lights started flipping off and on, off and on. She thought they were messing around. They weren't even in the room. This was like recent. And then like constant off and on, off and on. And then until my daughter was like, what is this? Because there was tarot cards all over it. She was like, Mom. And I was like, get that shit out of my house. My house is sensitive. I don't know what's going on in here.
So, like, an alternate title for today's talk could almost be "The Satanic Panic Was Right All Along."
Whew, I don't know. Yeah. See, somebody said light as a feather, stiff as a board works. It works. Like stuff is weird. There is stuff that works. And the
Yeah, I
Bloody
don't know.
Mary,
I would have to see that and analyze it in like a
we were
controlled
little.
environment. I just absolutely do not believe that it works.
We were
I've
like,
only time I've seen is on the craft
we were 8 to 10 years old and we lifted like a pretty heavy 10-year-old.
with
Or
just your finger. See,
it worked.
I just can't fathom it. I can't fathom it. I feel like someone there was laughing after everyone left. They were like, "We got him. We got him so good." That's the
But
only part that would make sense to me.
how do you get them up? Like it's I
I
mean,
don't know. I'm not David Copperfield. There's a trick. Well, honestly, I don't. I can go and grab it maybe, but I've got a actual binding of something called the New Invocation, and the New Invocation was this underground newsletter that got sent to people that considered themselves actual heads of satanic covens and all of these like occult little groups. And I was ready to have my mind blown, like Manly Palmer Hall, uncensored almost. But what blew my mind even more is that over half of all these New Invocation underground pamphlets are literal magic tricks. It's talking about where you can supply chemicals and certain things to make blood appear by just mixing it with water, like a certain types of dyes that are clear and you can rub about in your skin. And then if you just dip a knife in water a little bit and touch it to where that chemical's at, it'll make it look dark. Like all of these different, like just technical
magic
parlor tricks. Yeah, parlor
Yeah.
tricks and magic tricks. But it would tell you how to set the lighting and set the mood. And here's the different demonic names to read out. But it was all just a ruse. And I could see that that was why it was this underground magazine that only the cult leaders or the coven leaders were allowed to have access to this. And I don't think anyone going and experiencing these would want to have the magic destroyed for them. I think deep down, and this is my skepticism talking, right? This is me thinking like deep down, everyone wants to believe that light as a feather, stiff as a board is legit and it's this magic that works and like kids see it and they prove it. But also someone's pulling a scam. Like there's no
I
way
don't
that I
know.
believe that it's
Only
legit.
reason why I believe it may be legit at that point was because we were kids and we didn't know what we were doing. And there was no older kid to like, if there was a 12-year-old there, like maybe so, because then, right. But I'd had some other bad things happen to me as a kid that way. Because
Well, how
like,
far did you lift this kid up in the air?
yeah, up, like up.
What does that mean? Like a foot? Like
Like
3
up,
feet?
like you've got them up and you start out with the hand underneath and then everybody starts to move their hands and it's just there. And I will say that worked. And then I will say I did go to a sleepover. They did pull out a Ouija board, but this was only when I was like 9. And they were asking it these questions. Well, it started talking about this girl's brother, and they were older than me. So I was already a little sketched. Like I was like, they're like 11, 12, you know, and I'm like, seems like a bad idea. Let's just go play dolls. Like, I don't want to do this. And I was there, and of course they called me a baby. And so, you know, you wait a minute. And it said, okay, when's your brother gonna die? And she said that because she just couldn't stand her brother. He was super annoying, and he was. And it said tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, right. And all of us freaked out, stopped playing the game, and he did. He hung himself on the clothesline on accident the next day. And that was weird, man. Like that happened in my life. Like it wasn't a story I read. Like that happened. And I was just like, yeah, I'm never touching one of those again ever in my life. Like it doesn't matter what it promised me. I could learn all the things that I super want to know. Yeah, I'm out. Because that scared me so bad. And it
How
could
have
have
I
been a
never heard this
weird
story before?
coincidence.
That sounds absolutely significant.
Well, I mean, it's weird. Plus,
The
you're
fir-
busy
the
all the
first
time.
let me just restate this. The first time you saw and used the Ouija board, someone asked it when their brother was gonna die. It said tomorrow, like it spelt out the entire word
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, letter by letter, and then the next day her brother died accidentally.
And he's young. Like he was young, not old enough to be like, I want to unalive. Likely not.
Was
Like
she
he was
old enough
10.
to make
She was
good on
12.
her? I mean, I've seen The Good Son. I don't want to put anything on a 12-year-old, but
I know. Trust me. And they were a weird family as it was. And I told my mom, like when
oh
I
my
went
god.
home, I know. I told her when I went home, and then she's like, no more going over there. And then that happened the next morning, and she's like, ever. I was like, oh my gosh. And it scared me
I don't
bad
blame
enough
her.
that I was like, oh my god, like you never think that that's going to be a thing, you know, ever. But yeah, it was. And whether that was a coincidence or not, I don't know, but I can tell you what, I never touched another one again in my life ever. Ever. So
I can see that. That one also doesn't defy physics the same way that light as a feather would defy physics. Like that
right,
one
it could be
has
an accident. Yeah.
right. Another, I guess, to your credit, it does sound like
It
drugs are better
works.
than Dungeons and Dragons. So
Yes. Oh, drugs, 100. They're just gonna give you the riot act, but also remember this, like the years that I'm coming up. I mean, my name is Heidi Love. Like people think I chose this. This is my name. And so my parents chose that. That's not my last name. This is my middle name. And, you know, if you got caught with weed or something, they'd just be like, well, I mean, I know how it is. My dad just would have laughed. My dad smoked weed until probably the day he died. He didn't give a shit. But my mom definitely would have been like, not the brightest thing to do. But
do Mormons
she,
ever cite the same biblical verses about, like, well, if God created it, it's got to be
right. Yes.
good? Does that get brought
My
up sometimes?
definitely
Okay.
my husband was a stoner all through school, and I'm pretty sure he used that on his family. My
It's like a
husband is
legal
not
shortcut.
he's like, how come I'm the only one that like literally Mormonism at 16? He's like the only one. They come from like a really religious family. He's like, seems like BS. Like at 16. He just was out. He was like, no, this is stupid. Plus he has red hair. So he didn't like blend. And then he was kind of a stoner, and he was a rocker. And so he's like, why am I so different than my family? I'm like, I don't know, but you should probably thank God for that. That's probably a good thing.
That RH negative, probably. That's what it is.
Maybe. I think he's positive. So, but that's me. That's on my side.
What
But yeah,
about, this is a good comment. What about the Bloody Mary 3 times in the bathroom? I'm assuming all
I
this
never
stuff's gonna be
played
off
it.
limits. Okay.
Oh
Did you
my
know
gosh.
about it as a kid?
Yeah. After the traumatic Ouija board, no one had to tell me anything. I
Right.
was
I get
done.
that. So
No.
you were sold on Satanic Panic, like,
Oh,
for since forever, right?
mm-hmm.
So I
That was
guess I'm
like
on the
10.
opposite end of that spectrum, is where I legitimately grew up for, you know, at least ages 6 through 8 or 9, thinking that someone was gonna kidnap me at some point. Like, it was just a matter of time before every kid gets kidnapped and thrown in a van and satanic stuff happens to you. And then after it didn't, and then after I realized that it just kind of fizzled away, all of a sudden the cops started going in the classrooms and talking about it. People started making fun of it. It started becoming parodies, and then
The
everyone turned
joke.
into a
Yeah.
goth. You
This is
realize,
my
like, oh,
mom. This is my mom. This really happened, dude.
what do you mean by that? What happened to your mom?
That she had to have the Catholic priest come and bless the home several times to rebuke whatever was there. Like, just saying, it was a little scary. I don't know. Yeah, it was. I don't
What
know.
about horror movies? Do horror movies kind of meet the
Yeah.
criteria for being satanic?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it depends. It depends on how Mormon you get, right? Like, I don't know how to remove that. It depends on how good you are. Like, some would watch them, some would not. I mean, you might have to take that off the screen.
What is
Uh,
what here? Someone else also mentioned that White Wolf RPG. Never even heard of that, but it sounds
I
like
haven't
a
heard of that.
gateway drug to D&D. So I would stay clear away from that.
Gateway drug. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I was an easy sell. Plus, I liked Geraldo, so I was like, "See, yeah, he knows." Yeah. Oh my
Satanic Panic in
gosh.
LA. Yeah, I mean, shout out Rhonda too. She's always in here. I think that Satanism in LA. Now we're talking about LaVey Satanism, which makes a whole lot of sense because he was a performer, right? He worked in a cabaret, and one performance in that cabaret that night, he declared the first meeting of the Satanic Church, I guess, and that's kind of where that version of it started. And they kind of preyed on celebrities and got musicians. Sammy Davis Jr. gets brought up a lot in this context, but they kind of went after it, almost like Scientology tried to establish
Oh
themselves
yeah.
as. And who else better though? Because even if you don't believe in the demons and the angels and the supernatural, Satanism can also be easily defined as just the celebration of self and just me, and doing everything for yourself. And that's kind of the LA lifestyle, right? Like, I want to go and be this big star. Satanism almost feels like the best match. If anything, Scientology might be like the clean cut version of Satanism. It's like the
Well, it's so much
Mormonism of
more
Satan.
work. Yeah, it's so much more work. They're like the Mormonism for sure. Scientology. And then, Satanism, to his
With
credit,
Satanism, you can just roll off the couch whenever, hit the bong, go to church.
LeVay hooked it up with Marilyn, and Marilyn was his buddy. So I'm just saying, like, I mean, he's living with tigers in his house. CPS got called because he had a live tiger in his house with his kids, and one got scratched, and he's like, "They're gonna be fine. It's fine." Like, okay, you have to put it past the guy. He was really going out there with the full on eccentricism, and
It
that's
builds
what LA
character,
loves.
I think.
Well,
Getting scratched by a freaking lion when you're a kid, that's
right?
a cool story to tell if you survive without any major
If
damage.
yeah,
I'm
and
just
I
I'm
mean,
just saying, I know that you probably would have your kids taken away rightfully, but I'm just saying,
they
you grow
didn't.
up
They didn't
and
take him
you're
away.
in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, and you're at the bar and someone's like, "How did you get that gash on your face?" And you're like, "Got attacked by a lion when I was 8." I don't know. That
He
it's like the coolest
he slept
icebreaker
with
ever.
me. He slept with me in my bed. Well, they didn't even care. I think they were like, "Here's some Neosporin, like, go fix it up, like, whatever.
Didn't this
Quit
happen to,
your
like, Jodie
complaining."
Foster too early on in life, I
Weird.
think? I think it
I
did.
don't
She got
know,
attacked
it's
by a
weird.
lion on a movie set.
Well, at least she was on a movie set and it wasn't sleeping with the kids. I mean, that is something, you
Well,
know?
that I think that also that's in another chapter of her biography, honestly.
Yeah, probably. And too, the whole thing with Bloody Mary, that the very famous Zachary King says that's how his whole deal started, was playing Bloody Mary, looking into the mirror. So I don't know.
I do
Grandmaster
feel left
Wizard.
out. I feel left out because I've never seen someone die from a Ouija board. I've never had the light as a feather, stiff as a board sleepover. That was like a girl thing, I think, at that point. And so
Yeah, maybe.
someone asked if I ever experienced anything supernatural. This is the most lame story ever, and I wouldn't even consider it supernatural. But I had this Gizmo doll. And this is peak of Satanic Panic, so I did attribute it to like a demon at the time. But I had this little mogwai. It was Gizmo as a mogwai, a little stuffed animal, and I brought it with me everywhere. It was like my absolute favorite. It was like literally my best friend.
Oh.
So I wouldn't let it out of my sight. And there was this one day that I had to pack to go to my grandparents, and I put it down on my bed exactly where I knew it would be, and then went and did something and came back and it was gone. And I literally spent the next 3 years of my life until we moved looking for this thing everywhere you could think it would be, and I never found it. My parents to this day, because I have brought it up before
Really?
recently, they swear that they didn't take it away because it was
You
like
got it
dingy or
wet.
something,
You
or
got it wet.
nothing. That yeah, I got it when it turned into actual.
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
got
fed it
hungry. It had to leave because you got it wet. That's what happened.
so that's the
Mm.
one thing that if you were to twist my arm and give me sodium pentothal or whatever, I'd probably bring that up in a drunken stupor of like, that's the one supernatural thing, is that something took that freaking Gizmo doll. Like, I guarantee you I
Where's
did not
my
misplace it.
gizmo?
To the point where my aunt, my aunt heard me talking about it when I was like 15 or 16, like years later, and she just bought me a new one just as like a joke,
Oh,
because it came, but it shook me. It shook me to my very core. So
well, I'm just saying, stuff happens. You never know. You never know. Especially if your parents never cop to it. You know.
I like that. Yeah, I got water on it. I just didn't realize it. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I had to go for food. It didn't want to eat you because, you took good care of it, right? So it
Now
left.
I'm curious. What if there's a Harry Potter Ouija board? Would
I
that get any
still
way?
No, I still don't think so, but they do all out, and I've told my kids, like, "Hey, those Harry Potter spells?" As I've learned more and more, I'm like, You might wanna just skip over the words because 'cause they're real." And they're like, "What do you mean they're real?" I'm like, "I can't verify that it's a definite incantation, but all this seems like an incantation." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. But, JK Rowling, she's got some Salve coagula up her arms. I'm
Yeah.
not trusting that girl." Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
So- some Pore Patronus sort of spells.
Serious. Yeah, weird. Wouldn't
So
you be fun to give sodium pentothal to all the 33 levels? Oh, wait, 32. I don't know. You tell
I'll
me.
do it willingly. I'll do sodium pentothal willingly.
Yeah, but then
So
you'll tell your Mason
this was
secrets.
the big Satanic Panic story that I remember was the McMartin
Mhm.
preschool,
Yeah.
and that's the
Yep.
one that gets brought up the most often. There was also an HBO movie about it in the early to mid 90s, I think, that was all about the McMartin preschool trial, and they retell it. I don't know. I mean, I know that Rhonda said that she knows a kid that went there and went through all the satanic stuff under
They've
the
never
school.
disproved it. I mean, they know that there was literal kids with STDs. So, I mean, you can't fake that, that there was something happening. Whether it was satanic or not, I don't know. But
The normie HBO handwave version of all that is that it was all about, and this is where that Michelle Remembers book comes back into play, because Michelle Remembers starts, and what Michelle Remembers does is this lady goes to see a therapist, and under hypnosis she starts recounting all of these things that happened early on in life that she apparently had repressed, and almost every thought that comes up during this sort of early life progression is that it's all satanic abuse, that she was part of these rituals, and there was like bloodlet, like all of the things that I don't want to get into too much visceral detail
mhm.
for obvious reasons, but all of the things that you hear claim now, but that the early criticism was that was the same thing you were talking about. Ask Alice, right? Michelle Remembers
Right.
and Ask Alice in this way is that once people started putting scrutiny to it, the facts start changing, the credentials of the therapist start changing around, and it comes
Mhm.
out that he might have been planting a lot of these ideas, and that exact same premise, because Michelle Remembers was the catalyst for the Satanic Panic. Now the therapist
Right.
in the McMartin preschool trial, that they would call these kids in, and and this is where that joke, like, show me on the doll where it hurt you or whatever, this came from the McMartin preschool trial sort of tactics, where they would bring a kid in the room and they would give him like a little Cabbage Patch doll that were altered to show a little bit more detail, and they would say, show us on this doll, where someone did something. They didn't lead up into it, they just kind of like threw that out
Right.
there. Or they would say things like, when they brought you under the school and made you sacrifice animals, what kind of animal was it that you were sacrificing? I'm being a
Mm.
little bit hyperbolic on that, but that's again, this is the normie HBO explanation, is that every single one of those instances in the McMartin preschool trial, that the kids were being led by, they
But
would like they were
the
meeting the witness.
physical evidence of STDs, their hymens, like, Same thing with the finders. Like the finders started off a lot of this too. I'm just saying, but like there were actual physical issues wrong with these kids. So something happened, like
Well,
whether it's
Finders
satanic.
is its own story, and I am
Right.
100% believe Finders.
Right.
I
And
don't
then
know. I have no idea where I'm at on McMartin. I'm all in on Boys Town and Larry King and the Franklin scandal. That all sounds legit. There's
Mhm.
even reports of, I think, in DC and Craig Spence. If you look into Craig Spence and Alan Bear, like all of this is absolutely legit.
Right.
And some of that also gets into, I wouldn't say satanic panic, but like horrible, horrific things that you would imagine would happen in a satanic cult if they were hardcore. I would bet that 99.9% repeating of quote unquote self-proclaimed Satanists would walk into a room with this happening and be like, oh wow, this is not what I wanted,
Whoa.
and turn into something else completely, right? Because they would think
Leave.
Satanists don't really do that. They're just kind of being edgelords. We're just mad at our parents
Right.
for making us clean our room when we were younger.
Well, and there's some very similar stuff to this, and everyone that's ever brought this up, so I'm gonna be very careful here. In the 90s, right, it wouldn't be talking about satanic panic without the paste papers. They are real. Um, in the 1990s, have you heard about this at all? About the paste
This
papers?
this came up, but inform me. I'm gonna try and look it up while you're talking.
Okay. So the reports include, and this is just me reading somebody else's thoughts because I'm not going to take the heat for this. The reports were so outlandish that the bishop, who this was all reported to, but there were several cases. In fact, he met with 60 individuals who detailed this, and they talked about all of this being very wild, like so wild, satanic, like animals, everything you're saying, like sexual stuff, cannibalism. And then okay, so we all blow it off, and these people are related to the president of the prophet of the church right now. Okay, there was an actual case opened, a child abuse case that was unfounded. I'm going to put that up there, unfounded, don't come at me, right? And it was unfounded but opened without prejudice. It was left without prejudice that this occurred. And then all of a sudden one day, David Levitt, which I'm going to say this because he went on the news and did this. This isn't me saying this. He said this. He got on the news and said, I am not a cannibal. And everybody was like, everybody went, no one asked you, bro. Like, what? What? Did you hear something in your earpiece? Like, what is it? What? And he's an attorney, and then he ran away to Scotland. So do I know what happened? Nope. Do I want to conjecture? Nope. There's a whole case about it in the 90s, and I'm just saying he went on the news and said that.
Have you ever denounced being a cannibal?
Oh, no, I didn't feel it was
Why
necessary.
not? Well,
Not at a press conference for sure.
I'm just wondering now why. Why have you never denounced being a cannibal?
I mean, I thought it was a given. I'm definitely not. But I don't know why you would want to go on TV and be like, this is the time when these are strange accusations are out where I'm just going to come out full steam ahead and go, I'm not a cannibal. Oh, all right.
It's worth saying. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if I can say that because I was raised Catholic and I've taken the Eucharist, so
No, not the
technically
same. Not the
not the
same
same.
thing.
No, okay.
But there's 2 Davids in this, and the other one, you know, the actions that happened afterward are very strange because the church did try to cover this up, which if they had nothing to hide and it's ridiculous, why would you do that? And then also, like, okay, say it's PR, bad PR, I'll take it there, fine. But then also he moves away to Scotland, and then the other David that was involved, like he was a therapist and he had all these credentials and he's like, yeah, just kidding. I'm a shaman now. I'm a shaman. And then he just started doing like drum circles and stuff. But yeah. So, I mean, everybody went, wait a minute, what? Yeah. It's weird. I don't
do
know
like
about that.
the idea that McDonald's serves people. It reminds me of the Bob's Burgers conspiracy theory because they Bob's Burgers diner is right next to I guess like a morgue, right? Or like a
Well,
funeral home.
yeah. I don't. I mean, I would hope not, but yeah. I mean, if you're eating there, you're taking your chances, right?
There's a I've actually this came up the last time when we thought about doing this idea for the show, the space paper. So this is
I
another
know it's so
explanation of
sketchy.
it. And I've never heard this particular
So
thing before. It
no,
says
this is real. This is yeah. This is
so in
unfortunate.
1990 to 91, a leaked document came out from within the LDS Church and its elders listing acts of ritual abuse. The document written by Elder Bishop Glenn Pace, hence the name, the Pace Papers, I assume, stated
Mhm.
that he had personally met with 60 individuals who detailed similar or identical details of abuse within the church, which included all the things that you said and a study of satanic doctrine, and is in some
Yes.
cases infant things
Yeah.
and
Yep.
cannibalism. The
Mhm.
reports were so outlandish that even Bishop Pace initially doubted the validity of the claims until he was personally convinced through each victim's testimony and from seeing the obvious damage it had done to those subjective. He went on to write a 12-page
Yeah.
memorandum in hopes to bring justice to the victims, blah, blah, blah. It gets leaked to the press in 1991, causing a 30-month-long police investigation that would
Yes.
deem no credible testimony was ever given, and this to be attributed to false memories. And that this
But
false
these
memory
people were not
syndrome.
related. Like, they weren't related. Like, it's weird. And I will say this about the Pace Papers. Everyone, it's kind of like the pay. It's funny. They kind of go together. The Pace and then family that you can't talk about on podcasts. Well, very similar with this situation because everyone I've ever seen deep dive this gets nuked. Like the last girl that deep dove this, and then she made it on, the big one. And then after she made it on that, because she was trying to explain that this is the rumor. Okay,
Certain
these are
families that
rumors.
you don't say, yeah.
Right. These are rumors, I'm going to say. She went on and said, it's not the LDS church, but there's a faction inside the LDS church that carries on this satanic stuff. And they're out there to this day. And she was trying to break it down and show people some stuff. Well, the next thing I know, she makes it on the big one. And then after she makes it on that podcast, it goes completely away. And yeah, she just has a cooking show now. So that was weird. That got weird. We're
Are you
just
talking
talking
about
shit.
are you
I'm
talking about
not
Rachel
saying
Ray right
anything.
now?
I know she had her name was I'll find it. She did a whole series on it and she's kind of semi-famous. I mean, she was on like 90 Day Fiance and then she started delving into this, opened up her own podcast called the something Queen, Horror Queen, something like that. I'll find it. But yeah, she went on and then after that, that was it. And then she took them all down and that was it. I don't know.
Well, I would say that every book, documentary, movie, article I've ever come across that tries to take the typical debunking aspect of this, they all result in this false memory syndrome. And it basically, I summarized it already with the therapists kind of planting the ideas in the head, also paired with NLP style reinforcement, where if the kid didn't point something out, if the kid didn't say that they were, instructed to like sacrifice a goat under a preschool somewhere, if they didn't say that, then whoever is questioning them would be like, "Oh, are you sure?" It would kind of be like they were disappointed. They've got this adult figure. I'm just explaining this is the DNA that goes into the false memory syndrome and why this becomes the number one thing that gets cited to discount any of the satanic panic from the 80s and 90s in particular. And this is where my fascination started to kind of get spawned a little bit, because 80s and 90s, but what happened in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, right? They didn't
Mhm.
have the same exact kind of movement, but there were definitely, it seemed more cults. It seemed like there was more cult activity in these claims. And it was just in the 80s and 90s when now parents were concerned about their kids at home, which I think probably also got spawned from some of the Franklin scandal type stuff. Like that had
Yeah.
to make some kind of a dent at some level, and we were just seeing the ripples of that afterwards.
I mean, maybe people finally got on high enough to be like, "Shit, we should take care of our kids." Like, what? I don't know. I don't know. But Yeah, it definitely became a situation. Like it
Well,
was
most of
everywhere.
the serial killers seem like they ended up being kind of like straight cut. They were the ones
Oh.
that were like, you damn hippies. They're the ones that go out and,
Yep.
and kill everyone. You ever seen that
Yeah.
movie Joe?
You
Probably
always
not.
have to be worried about the quiet ones because I will say this, I work in psych. It's never the noisy person. They're just annoying. It's the one sitting in the corner that hasn't said a word, and you got to watch that person because you might get clocked. So, yeah, it's strange. I don't know. It
Well,
can get weird.
again, this I feel like we're gonna have to bring this topic up more and more often because I am realizing that you are still in the satanic panic, right? You still wouldn't let anyone use a Ouija board, and you might
I mean,
someone out of playing Dungeons and Dragons.
it was pretty traumatic. I mean, my like experience with that was pretty
I had
scary.
never
But
heard that. You're blowing my mind still. I'm gonna I'm still digesting what you told me.
But I will say I know my one son is really obsessed with the Magic game now, and that girl's name was the Chiller Queen, and she did, like, a bunch of episodes, but she took all of them down but, like, 5. And so, I'm just saying. But yeah, I don't think for me, like, that would ever I wouldn't want that in my house, but he's a grown up and he lives on his own and, whatever. He's doing his own thing.
Have you ever seen the Ouija board movies?
Oh, yeah. I watch scary
Which
movies.
board, right? Which
Yeah.
board, 1 and 2?
Yeah, I don't get, like, too freaked out or anything about that. Like, I work
Would.
at the
I
psych
mean,
hospital.
honestly, you've got the best excuse out of anyone I've ever
I
talked
mean,
to
whew,
on why you
yeah,
wouldn't use a Ouija board.
definitely why I would never, but, even later, I did have my tarot cards done at some point in my life and all that stuff, and no, not anymore. I just wouldn't because, yeah, it's just not for me. But I also don't, like, fault anyone. Like, if you wanna go do it, but this is what happened to me. Like, I'm not about to do that after going through that. Like, thanks anyway. I'll pass. But
Where did
yeah.
you have your tarot cards read?
Oh yeah, our family used to do them. So, and then later I was like, isn't this bad? And my grandma was really into the whole like if you were gonna have a boy or girl and you hold the pendulum, like a wedding ring over your wrist and stuff. And later when I got out of Mormonism, I was like, huh, that was all kind of witchy. Weird.
So wait, so in Mormonism, you did tarot cards
I didn't ever do them, but I had them done. Yeah.
by Mormons?
Mhm. Mhm.
I would have thought tarot cards were the same off limits as a Ouija board would be.
I think they're I think this is the thing. I think they're sort of unmentioned, right? They don't want you actually worshiping Satan. They're pretty very serious about that. They say that, right? They're like, don't worship Satan and don't be in Satanism. But they don't these little things that are on the obscure, like, is this Satan? I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know how they would feel about it because I definitely wasn't going to talk to my bishop about that. So yeah, it's not for me anymore.
Now I'm wondering that there's got to be a Mormon tarot card deck out there somewhere, and
I
if
bet
there's
there
not,
is.
there needs to be.
I'm sure that there is. I mean, even the stuff we study now, I think a lot of it, the reason why they don't like us to study occultism is because then you're like, wait, what? They do that at the church. Because some of this stuff comes from Joseph, right? And you're like, wait, I've heard this before. What? And then so it goes back to that whole Brigham Young trying to, spice up the church. We got to reform it, make it more mainstream and be normal people. So uh,
I mean, I relate to that too because when I first started hearing about actual satanic rituals and the black mass and all of that, I just thought, oh, it's just a bunch of guys that haven't shaved and have like a dirty carpet doing what I see happening every Sunday in Catholic mass. They're just wearing sneakers versus I'm going to this place with huge cathedral ceilings and like stonework and stained glass. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to the
yeah.
nice version, but they're doing the exact same things essentially.
Yeah, exactly. You see a lot of it and you're like, okay, huh, where'd that come from? And like I say all the time, I think that if they went backward, and I know that they never will, because I'm not even talking about the LDS church anymore. When we talk about the LDS, the first thing that comes to my mind is LDS Inc., right? Like incorporated. That is a very different thing than Mormons, like back in the day with Joseph Smith, the Church of Christ. It was originally called the Church of Christ. And so, but I will tell you, talk about scandalous and body things. We need to do one on necromancy because I found a little rabbit hole digging around and it gets weird. And I was trying to figure out about why the Dartmouth connection. And then they're always talking about them being money diggers, but they were failed money diggers. And then I found out the doctor that saved Joseph's leg. Okay, the mom writes in her book about this, Lucy Mack Smith, and I've got her book. And Brigham tried to get this book completely out of everywhere. He paid her off. She basically wrote this book as a flex. She's like, pay my effing bills, you bitch, or I will burn your house down. Like, and he did. And then she, let them kind of rearrange the book a bit and they still put it out. But what he really wanted was the book never to be put out. But I guess like the people that followed through on this didn't get the message and it got put out. So she says, Dr. Nathan came. How often do you call your doctor by their first name, like Dr. Heidi? Like,
I don't trust doctors at all, so.
Well, right. But
I don't
if
call
you
anything.
had one, you would call him like Dr. Smith, right? Well, that happened to be his name. I don't think she forgot that his last name was her last name. And the funny thing is he was the progenitor and the first person to start Dartmouth Medical College. And he needed something that he got in trouble for. Speaking of digging up bodies, he needed dead people and he needed people to dig them up. And what were the family and all those people called? Right, they're money diggers, but they were failed money diggers. I don't know. Seems weird. He got ran out of town for digging up corpses. And then it makes it make so much more sense. But I was always like, why were they so weird about Alvin, the brother? And when he died, they ran this whole newspaper thing like, we didn't dig up our brother. And they stayed at the cemetery with him for 5 weeks. What? Like, why would you do that? And seems a little strange, but yeah, Dr. Nathan Smith, if anybody wants to fact check me, feel free. He was the first medical school. And guess where he went after he got ran out of town? To Yale. It all makes sense in the end, right? We get one big circle. So it's an interesting show. I'll tell you what.
All necromancy all the way down. There's a comment here too from Cindy. Wasn't Joseph Smith's family background way back have a connection with magic? Yep. Hell yeah, they did. If you go and watch the first 3 episodes, we go pretty much laser focus into detail on that. And Heidi presents her entire case on how Joseph Smith was this occultist. He wasn't a bumpkin. He was well versed in all of these ancient grimoires, and that his family were using all sorts of occult rites and talismans and literal magic in order to do a whole number of things.
Since I seen you last during this whole rabbit hole I fell in, I found out that his great-great-grandpa, I think it might be one more great in there, was Captain Samuel Smith, who started the Boston Tea Party. Funny enough, Captain Samuel Smith was a very big deal in Massachusetts, and he's a statesman. You would think that, Mormons are very patriotic. You would think they would want to be like, look at our grandpa. He did some cool stuff like over here, right? But they don't want you to know that. And the reason why they don't want you to know that is because he was involved in the Inquisition and had somebody hung. Speaking of satanic.
Panic. But he wasn't satanic.
For witchcraft.
This almost sounds like the Salem witch trials, right?
It is.
Or is this the same
that
guy?
is what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No.
Famously, when I went to Salem and I went to one of those tourist traps where they just like show you all this, but they also mentioned that he was related to Joseph Smith. They didn't go much farther than that, but they mentioned that part.
They surely don't. And you know what's really funny, knowing that you've seen Primeval now and you know what happened with the whole. Now, what happened with the Mountain Meadows massacre? Okay, the cover story for the Boston Tea Party was they were going to dress up as Native Americans and dump the tea in the harbor. And then what was the story for the Mountain Meadows massacre? They dressed up as Native Americans and killed a bunch of people. So, I don't
think the Mormons completely own the monopoly on dressing up like Indians and then committing that. That's just false flag.
Just
right?
saying. But they definitely don't want that connection upward. And actually, I found it randomly going up through the other family line. I wasn't even looking for that, but I did find it interesting. And they do have verifiable facts on who he accused. Her name was Mary something, I can't remember, but that he accused her and she was hung. He was responsible. And it wasn't like he just met her once, it was his sister-in-law or something. So, yeah.
Well, maybe she was
Me
a
think,
witch
mm,
or a
or he
bitch
was a
or
wizard.
both,
Or he
right?
was a wizard and me thinks she protests too much. She caught him doing something, maybe. I don't know.
Let's see. We're winding down here. So here, a final question for Heidi. Do you have an opinion on the Book of Mormon musical? Have you seen it yet?
No,
You haven't
no, I
seen it
mean,
yet? Come on, what are
I
you doing?
know, I know, I hate
It's
musicals.
Oh, I'm just telling you, I hate musicals more than you hate musicals, and this is one that gets a pass. This is one of the only musicals on the planet that gets a pass because it is just so entertaining. I don't know. I have to recommend it because you would actually get to see it in Salt Lake City, which is the
Oh,
only
man.
place I think you should be able to see this. But I think I
Oh,
drove to Tampa to see it a long time ago.
I will have to do this. I will bite the bullet and do it, just because I guess it needs to be done. It must be that
Gonna
good.
have to. Your position now in the influencer world as being somewhat
Yeah,
of an expert on
true.
all things Mormon, you kind of need this under your belt, right? You need
Right, right.
this
Eh,
patch.
oh, that's funny. Okay, I'll do it. I hate musicals. I have to tell you, I'm
I'm telling
literally
you, trust me. I watched Wicked and I skipped through every single song in it just so I could say I had seen it. But
yeah,
I can't stand any musical of any kind. I hated
I
Sweeney Todd, even though people
yeah,
were like, "Oh, if you don't like musicals, you'll like it." I hated that.
I didn't
All of
like it.
them. Maybe like Muppet Christmas, I might be okay with, and some of the early
Maybe.
movies and stuff. Like
Ugh,
hi ho type things. But
yeah,
otherwise,
it's not
I'm
for
completely
me.
off.
It's totally not for me. But I will do it. If you say it's okay and you
I'm
hate them as
saying you
much.
absolutely need to, and you would get such a unique version of it, I'm sure. I'm sure the version in
Okay, I will
Tampa
do it.
can't even touch the one that you're gonna get in Salt Lake City.
All right, you got it. You got it. I'll do it. My husband's watching. Honey, we have to go see it. Okay.
All right, we'll hold you to it. All right, well,
Oh, that's
what
funny.
else you got going on this week? Apparently, you already did another live stream today. What did you do earlier?
Not today. I did one the other day. I did one on RFK. That was my third one on Mormon Mafia RFK without a voice. You knew my voice was so trashed. It was so bad. It was like the worst. But I did do that the other day, and that was super fun. And I'm definitely still into all the JFK RFK. I'm like just throat deep in like all of it because it's so interesting. Like whether people want to believe it or not, like that's fine. That's on them. But like the docs are there. You just have to comb through them. That's the only pain. So Mayhew is all over those documents. So it's been an interesting find. I also am very deep diving Hiram Smith for a change of pace and trying to figure out exactly, what was going on with the Dartmouth Indian School. And it's been interesting, very interesting, some of the theology from his Uncle John, which we should probably do a show on. So it would be fun. Yeah.
I'm down. I'm down to keep doing more and more of these. Well, I had an
Yes.
idea that was fleeting. It was like, let's go watch a bunch of Mormon movies and do episodes on those. And I feel like I've seen them all, and a lot of them are not very good.
Are
A
not
lot of
very
them
good.
are like actually really bad Mormon movie. I think we've seen all of the the breakout ones.
Yeah, I think so. They're just always, the same. It's kind of the same thing repackaged every time. Like, and they made the right choice. Yay. Yeah. I mean,
Saturday Warrior, I think, is my favorite by
yeah,
far.
well, I mean, for theology's sake, it's good to have people watch it just so that they understand what is happening. Because really, I don't think people fully understand when we say you lived in the premortal, like what we mean. And that movie does show exactly what they mean. So
There was also I'm just remembering this. There's also a Saturday morning cartoon version of a bunch of Mormon tales. Have you seen
oh,
those growing
Jacob's
up?
here. Jacob's here. I see
Oh,
Jacob.
Jacob's gonna sneak in. Let's see.
It,
Hey,
Jacob!
Jacob.
hey, it's good to be here. I'm going to keep hitting the mute button, and I don't think my reception is the best. boom, I got called out on some Mormon ministry stuff. Not the LDS ministry stuff, Mormon ministry stuff. So I'm gonna hit mute button so I'm not too noisy while I travel.
Oh, you're good. How you been?
I've been doing really, really well. I'm super freaking excited for the stream, and then literally about 15 minutes after Thomas sent me the link saying we'll start in about an hour, I got a buddy call me up in a full blown panic attack. We had a ministry time together where saying prayers and everything else. The calmness, the peace has returned. He's doing awesome, but like I hate not being punctual, let alone not showing up. So,
oh man,
I'm sorry.
It was a Mormon emergency. That's what I said.
Mormon emergency, Jacob.
It was a Mormon emergency.
Yes, it was. And I learned from last time how to just dangle this in front of my beard so my beard isn't that impenetrable windscreen.
Oh, that's so funny.
Well,
Jacob was going to take me to the Satanic Park. We're going to do that one still. We got together on that.
I will message you. We will do that. We're going to make you know what? There's somebody else that I'm going to drop you in a group chat with. We're going to take some notes. We're going to do a video on the history of it. We'll produce something really good.
Let's do it. And then we'll put it on here for the peeps so they can see what's up.
Jacob, have you seen the Book of Mormon musical?
I haven't, but I do remember the chorus and the refrain of, because I'm a Mormon and I just believe. That's the main theme.
I can't believe the two people in this world that need to see this musical are the only ones that haven't seen this musical.
I haven't seen it, but from what I understand of the premise, there's a lot of truth in the premise where, like, here I am, some 19-year-old traveling to a different continent saying you should change all of the fundamentals about your life because me with no life experience is telling you to. So I get the irony of it.
Right, and that he himself doesn't understand Mormonism, but he does know Star Wars, so he just starts repeating things that happen in Star Wars and saying that that's what happens in Mormonism, and he gets all these African guys on board, and that's basically the premise. You can't really spoil it because of how silly it is, but it's done so well. Heidi committed to going and seeing it, so do we have the same commitment from you, sir?
Let's do it, Jacob. We got to watch it.
Okay, we got a thumbs up. That's as much as we're gonna get from him. Well, we were actually winding down. You came at the perfect time to get your 2 cents in on the Pace papers. We were talking about Pace and that he had this same sort of satanic panic claims, and he wrote this 12-page memorandum. And you're the one that I think originally brought this up on one of our previous episodes. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the Pace papers.
I find Glenn L. Pace to be a true believer in the LDS institution, trying to serve God the best that he can. He did 60 interviews over the course of 18 months. His conclusion, I believe, is an accurate one, that the literal child sacrifice, baby-eating Church of Satan operates actively within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he had confidence as he pled for the leadership to take the ball from there, to where he could get them whatever information they need so they can start their part in rooting out the Church of Satan. And I found out after discussion with somebody, it was shortly after that he was released from his position as the presiding bishop and got sent to Africa and off the continent for the remainder of his tenure. Just like, you are not allowed on the North American continent anymore. There was 2 people that I know, Micah Turner and Ben McClintock, who have a freedom-minded radio show here in Utah. They went to Bishop Pace's door just not many months before he ended up dying. And he was like, "What are you doing here? How'd you get this address?" Nice, cranky old man. I like those kind. But they said, "Hey, we wanted to hear it from you, the memorandum you put out. Do you stand by it? Is it true?" And he affirms, it's like, "Yes, it's true, and it's worse than what's in the memorandum." So he was adamant about that, willing to say it up front. But for me, like, I'm a firm believer in the scriptures, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the patterns regarding child sacrifice, the killing of the innocent, operating in the dark. I am quite convinced that Bishop Pace looked behind the curtains at least a little bit to recognize this same secret killing of children for false gods is happening in the LDS Church. And sadly, his report did not result in it being taken seriously.
No, it's because of the players, right? You know, they go too high up. So,
Well, again, Craig Spence was the name that came the closest to convincing me that there was definitely something there, because that is the sort of political aspect of the exact same claims, but you remove any of the religious fervor or bias from it, and you just say, look, here's an actual guy that's running this very real operation that's ensnared all of these high-level politicians, and clearly there's some sort of a intelligence connection here. And I guess you could probably make the exact same claims with like a Jeffy Island situation where it's based on these ancient bathhouses and all sorts of other claims that, again, are probably going to get brushed under. Topical. Didn't Virginia Guthrie just get hit by a freaking bus?
yeah, she did.
And she now is expecting like 4 days left to live.
Yeah, that's what I
So yeah,
saw.
like you were saying, sometimes these cases just never get resolved for a whole host of reasons, including getting hit by a freaking bus.
Well, and they go after everyone everyone that I've seen. I used to do shows with Justin Riggs from LDS Abuse, and he does not speak anymore. He did do a show about this with me, episode 105. He does not do anything like that anymore. He's kind of ghost now, but he still has his website up. LDS Abuse is what it's under. And I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that he, you know, look at everything afterward. Like, he ran away to Scotland and says he's not a cannibal. Like, what? And there is a book about this called Cowboy Boots and Paper Dolls, if anybody wants to read it. That's from the person it happened to. So
Cowboy Boots and Paper Dolls. That's about the guy that said I'm not a cannibal and then ran away.
Well, it's about the situation that we're talking about. Yeah. So yeah, it's not good. I don't know.
I feel like Jacob unmuted himself for a second because he was also going to claim he's not a cannibal.
I was just going to give a plug for Paper Dolls. It is I have friends that are friends with those who claim they were a part of that ring of abuse, and they claim that it is based upon the actual abuse happening in North Salt Lake City, Bountiful area primarily, among other places. So
which is a very nice area.
In other words, of course, to avoid lawsuits, you put it out as a work of fiction. But they adamantly declare that everything depicted in that is what was suffered by them and others.
Yes. Yep.
Well,
going up to high up people in the church.
This is all new to me. I was so glad that you guys introduced me to the Pace Papers. It kind of like reinvigorated my interest in this. Coincidentally, too, I just recorded an episode of Under the Docks, which is my new podcast series with Sean Chris from Kill the Mockingbirds, and we rewatched Conspiracy of Silence, and it just put me right back in there. That was kind of the first thing that really pushed me over the edge, and I do credit growing up in the Satanic Panic of giving me the entire framework. Like, I knew all the claims were, and then when I came across that book and started looking into those names, that was when it all came flooding back, and it was like, oh my god, maybe part of this was legit.
And this was the accusations that are against the people are against the prophet of the church's daughter and the son-in-law. So just saying.
Well, I'm not making those claims, and just in case anyone's listening,
it's on KUTV News. I'm just saying. Yeah, this is from KUTV News. These are not my claims.
Go take out the reporters at KUTV News.
Yeah, Jim Spywhack. Yeah, Jim Spywhack's words, not mine.
All right, let's just make sure that Jim's okay, and then he's the canary in the coal mine for us, I believe.
Sorry, Jim.
So once he gets hit by a truck, we'll stop talking about this too.
Exactly. It wasn't us.
Okay, well, I guess now officially we can wrap this up since we had Jacob in here. He gave us his hit on the Pace Papers. Heidi, what do you have that's going on coming up?
Yep, just hitting the grindstone with all kinds of fun stuff. We're still doing a lot of JFK, RFK. I believe MLK will be coming out soon. So this will be the 4th show on Mormon Mafia. All of it tying to Mormons and space even. So that's very interesting. And aliens, because aliens. Why not? And I
James
am
Bond and John D. I think that was where we went the last time. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's everywhere podcasts are served. I do have my own website if you don't want to use a Podbaser. It uploads to there at unfilteredrisepodcast.com. And I do have a Patreon, and twice a month you will get shows that nobody else gets. So check it out.
All right. Do your plugs, Jacob. You're just in time for it.
There's a YouTube channel called Disciple of Christ. The logo looks a little bit like that dark blue cover of the Book of Mormon. It's mainly regarding people's spiritual journeys. I even do a Saturday night Sunday school live stream. There's going to be a super cool interview that you and I recorded, Brother Thomas, and laying the smackdown on all kinds of secret combinations within the LDS and Mormon ranks. That was a fun one to record with you. At some time soon this year, I'm going to be opening up another channel because Disciple of Christ, I view it as my ministry. There's going to be another channel that's more just like Mormon news oriented. And Heidi, I'm probably just going to have to bug you to help me out.
You're more than welcome to. And for anybody watching from my channels and stuff, Paranoid, let us know what's up. What you doing?
Man, the biggest news right now is this Illuminati comic just dropped. I've sent out a little over 250 of these this week. It's all I did all weekend, and up until like 10 minutes before we started recording, I've just been packing these orders. If you missed out, don't worry. As soon as we're done sending all the early copies to everyone that backed us early on, back in November, December of last year, we'll have any leftovers on the website. So you can just go to paranoidamerican.com. If you haven't already, you should go there anyways and sign up for the newsletter, because you'll get a promo code and you'll also get advance notice for when any new comic books drop, new sticker packs, all of which we've got a lot coming out this year. Like we just barely got started on that Illuminati comic. There's so much more content. So go to paranoidamerican.com to see stuff that you guaranteed you won't find anywhere else.
Awesome. Sounds good to me.
So
and you were just on a big show, right? Weren't you just on I saw a big show.
Yeah, I was on let me do a shout out. I was on Inverted World Live with Shane Cashman. And then, because Shane is like the coolest guy ever, he then gave me a shout out on Timcast. So I got a whole bunch of new people from maybe from Timcast. If you're listening now, thank you for following along. And right before that, I had done an episode of Sound Science with Shane. And the day before that, I did a Sound Science with Weston freaking Cage, who's the son of Nicolas Cage. But honestly, Weston in his own right is such a badass. He's a musician. He's got, as you would imagine, some crazy life experiences. So we just talked about music for 2 hours. A lot of Enya and Enigma and like pure mood soundtrack stuff from the 90s. So it was such a fun time. You'll only find that one on Rumble because YouTube sucks. So if you want to watch any of those Sound Science episodes, you should go on to Rumble and look for Paranoid American. So there you go. There's all the plugs. I can go on for much longer, but we've got other things to do.
Right. All right. Well, this was fun. Thank you so much.
They've got, and thank you, Paula D, for the super sticker. Appreciate you so much. And also, anyone that's in the Patreon tier, you're getting free stickers. And the next iteration will have some monthly Mormon Monday stickers and maybe some secret combination stickers. Who knows? But make sure you join the Patreon if you want to get a little piece of that action. So thank you guys, and I'll see you for the next one.
Bye.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real, the real, you will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cause. lost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb. Distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.